Hello and welcome to Soothing Pod's Sleep Stories. My name is Chris, and tonight we will journey to the mythic lands of ancient Greece, where gods walked among mortals and destiny was shaped by divine hands. Together, we will explore the tale of Ares, the god of war, and the mortal Cadmus. This is a story of strength, wisdom, and a bond forged in unexpected ways. Let this legendary tale of trials, loyalty, and love carry you into a deep and peaceful sleep. Before we begin our tale, let's take time to relax and let go of the stresses of the day. Close your eyes and take a deep, nurturing breath. Allow each inhalation to draw in tranquility, and each exhalation to release any tension or worries. As you settle into this moment, begin to envision yourself not as a human, but as a small seed nestled deep within the earth. Imagine the cool, dark soil embracing you, a protective embrace rich with potential. You are safe here in the quiet depths, surrounded by the earth's nurturing strength. You are not just any seed, but one destined for a remarkable journey of growth and discovery. Within you lies the essence of life, a spark waiting to ignite with the warmth of the sun and the nourishing rains that seep into the soil. Feel the first drops of water touching your casing, signaling the time to awaken. This moisture is not just water. It is the elixir of life, infused with the nutrients of the earth. It seeps through your shell, invigorating you, stirring the life force within. Now, begin to grow. First, send your roots downward. Tiny threads at first, growing stronger and more confident as they push deeper into the earth. They anchor you, drawing sustenance and stability from the soil. Feel the security of these roots, the foundation of your existence. As your roots establish themselves, focus your energy upward. A shoot forms inside you, tender and green, reaching toward the surface. This journey through the soil is a passage of transformation. With each movement upward, you grow stronger and more resilient. The darkness around you is not oppressive, but comforting. The silence filled with the anticipation of emergence. Visualize the surface of the soil just above you and push towards it. The journey is slow and deliberate, each millimeter a victory of life over the inert. You can sense the warmth of the sun filtering through the earth, calling you to break through. And then you do, breaking the surface. Open your metaphorical eyes as a young plant, tender leaves unfurling with the promise of life. You find yourself on a sunlit balcony, the air crisp and clear. Below, the vista of ancient Greece unfolds. Rolling hills, vibrant city-states, and the distant sparkling Aegean Sea. The beauty is breathtaking, timeless. But there is more. As you turn, you realize you are not just on any balcony. You are perched on Mount Olympus, the abode of the gods. The realization washes over you in a wave of awe and wonder. Here, the air is more vivid, the sky a deeper hue of blue, and the ambience imbued with a divine serenity. You are no ordinary plant. You have grown in the realm of deities. Feel the divine energy that flows around you. A gentle, powerful presence that nurtures and inspires. Here, you will flourish under the watchful eyes of the gods, a witness to the celestial and the earthly. And it is here, on his Olympian balcony, that our story begins. The towering peaks of Mount Olympus stretched high above the clouds. The wind whispered through the marble halls, and the soft glow of the setting sun bathed the stones in hues of gold and amber. Below, the world lay quiet and still, as if held in the gentle embrace of the gods themselves. In the distance, the soft murmur of a distant stream mingled with the rustling of olive trees, their leaves shimmering like silver under the fading light. All was calm, a rare moment of peace atop the sacred mountain. Ares stood on a broad terrace, his armor set aside, resting against a stone bench. He had recently returned from a great battle, and his armor was etched with the marks of countless clashes, scratches from swords, dents from shields, and the faint scourge of flames. Yet now, in the stillness of the terrace, the god of war found himself enjoying the quiet after the storm. He breathed in deeply, allowing the serenity to fill him, knowing that this peace, like all things, was fleeting. But for now, it was enough. Ares enjoyed the calm that followed a battle, the stillness that wrapped itself around the earth as if to soothe the wounds left by war. Clash of steel, the shouts of soldiers, the chaos of the battlefield, those sounds had long since faded into the distance, leaving behind only silence. And in that silence, Ares found something close to satisfaction. There was a strange joy in this balance, knowing that while war brought chaos and destruction, it was followed inevitably by peace. This was the way of things, a cycle that had existed long before men fought their first battles, and would continue long after the last sword had been raised. As much as he relished war, Ares understood the necessity of peace. And in moments like this, he allowed himself to appreciate the harmony between them. From his terrace on Mount Olympus, Ares could see the breadth of the world stretched out beneath him. He could see the rolling hills of Greece, the city of Athens, the rivers weaving their way through the countryside. He could see villages and farmsteads with smoke curling lazily from their hearths and chimneys. There were soldiers in training, merchants preparing their goods for sale, and children playing. Ares enjoyed watching the lives of mortals, each day filled with its own small battles, its own quiet struggles and victories. Ares cast his eyes across the lands of Greece, resting them on a shimmering lake. He would see his dragon gliding gracefully through the cool depths. Its dark scales gleamed in the sunlight, catching the rays and reflecting them like jewels. The creature, despite its size, moved with a fluid elegance, its massive form cutting through the water without a sound. Ares watched his pet with pride. The dragon was a reflection of him in many ways. Powerful, fierce when provoked, yet content when left to its own peace. It was then that Ares spotted a mortal man, followed by a small army of other men. It appeared that the men were following something. Ares narrowed his gaze. It appeared that the men were being guided by a cow. Ares watched in amusement as the leader, followed by his men, headed towards the waters where the dragon lay. Interesting, Ares muttered to himself, the faintest smile touching his lips. Just then, a soft breeze stirred behind him, and Athena stepped onto the terrace. "What has your attention, brother?" Athena's voice was light, but curiosity laced her words as she came to stand beside him. Ares gave a small nod toward the distant figure below. "That one," he said, a note of amusement coloring his tone. "He's led himself into an interesting situation, I'd say." Athena's gaze followed Ares' gesture. her thoughtful eyes resting on the men in the distance. She knew the tale well. With a soft sigh, she began to recount the story. "That is Cadmus," she said quietly, "son of Agenor, king of Tyre. He has travelled long and far, searching for his sister who was taken by Zeus. His journey has been filled with hardship, and yet it remains fruitless." Ares listened, his interest mild but present. After many months without success, Cadmus turned to the oracle at Delphi for guidance. Athena continued. The oracle, in her wisdom, told him to abandon his search for his sister. Instead, she advised him to follow a magic cow. Wherever that cow chooses to rest, there he is to build a city. Ares chuckled softly, the sound light and almost playful. "So, the oracle has sent him to my dragon, has she?" His eyes sparkled with amusement as he watched the scene unfold below. "Let's see how he fares. Though I expect my dragon will not be so easily bested." Cadmus stood quietly as the cow settled onto the soft grass, its journey complete. This, he knew, was the place where his city would rise. But before the foundations could be laid, the gods must be honored. Turning to his men, their faces calm and trusting, he gave a simple nod toward the waters that shimmered in the distance. "Go to the spring," he said, his voice measured and steady. "Bring back water for the ritual." The men moved without hesitation, making their way to the nearby spring. Around them, the world was peaceful, the air still and undisturbed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the land. The soft rustling of leaves in the breeze was the only sound, mingling with the quiet murmur of the water as it flowed through the rocks. The surface of the spring was clear and inviting, reflecting the fading sky like a perfect mirror. Everything seemed serene and tranquil. As Cadmus's men approached the spring, the water's surface rippled ever so slightly. At first, the men paid it no mind, thinking it nothing more than the natural movements of the water. But the ripples grew, spreading outward in soft, widening circles. From beneath the calm surface, a shadow began to rise. It moved slowly, deliberately. The dragon moved with a quiet grace, its enormous form rising fully from the water. Its eyes, bright and gleaming, held the ancient wisdom of a creature bound to protect something sacred. There was no anger in its gaze, only the steady resolve of a guardian fulfilling its eternal duty. Without warning, Dragon's tail flicked, sending a wave across the water as it surged toward the men. They barely had time to react, their movements slow and confused, before the dragon swept them aside as effortlessly as the wind bends blades of grass. The men were cast into the air. From his high perch, Ares watched the scene unfold with a faint, amused smile. His dragon had done exactly what it was meant to do: guard the sacred spring. There had been no true contest. The men stood no chance against the creature's power. Leaning back, Ares crossed his arms, his expression one of casual satisfaction. It seems they didn't stand a chance. He mused, his voice light as he glanced over at Athena. My dragon is not one to be trifled with. Athena stood beside him, her gaze serene as she watched the spring below. Perhaps they were not meant to succeed, she said softly, her tone thoughtful. Fate moves in ways even we cannot fully see. Ares chuckled, the sound low and indulgent. Perhaps, he replied, casting one last glance at the still waters before turning away. But for now, my dragon has done its part. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue across the quiet landscape, Cadmus made his way toward the spring. The cow rested peacefully on the grass. The stillness that surrounded him felt unnaturally heavy. The soft light of dusk reflected off the waters, calm and undisturbed, as if nothing had happened at all. But his men were gone. There were no signs of a struggle, no cries to echo through the trees. Only the silence of the spring and the faint whisper of the breeze. A quiet heaviness settled over Cadmus, but it was not the weight of sorrow or fear. It was the understanding that this land, this sacred and mysterious place, demanded a price. His men had fallen, not by chance, but by the will of something much larger than himself. He knew, then, that this was a task meant for him alone. There was no fear in his heart, only the steady resolve of a man who had learned to trust in the god's will. His path had been set long before he had arrived here, and now he would see it through. With a deep breath, Cadmus turned toward the spring, his steps deliberate and sure. He did not rush, nor did he falter. He had no weapon to draw, no shield to raise. All he had was his mind, his heart, and his trust in the gods. Cadmus knew that brute strength alone would not win this trial. This was a test of wisdom and faith. The dragon's power was undeniable, but there was something greater at play. The gods had led him here, and he would not waver. As he approached the water's edge, the stillness of the spring seemed to echo the calm within him. The dragon awaited, and Cadmus would meet it with neither fear nor rage. The surface of the spring rippled once more, soft waves spreading outward as the dragon rose from the depths. Its massive form coiled through the air with effortless grace, its dark scales shimmering faintly in the last light of day. The creature towered above Cadmus, its long, sleek body reflecting the quiet strength of an ancient guardian. The dragon's eyes, glowing like molten gold, settled on Cadmus. The mortal stood before the great beast, his heart steady and his mind clear. He did not reach for a weapon, nor did he challenge the dragon with force. Instead, he bent slowly to the earth, reaching for a branch from a nearby tree. The branch was light, its leaves soft and fragrant, carrying the scent of olive and earth. Holding it aloft, Cadmus stepped forward with quiet reverence, his movements slow and deliberate. He did not speak, for there was no need. The dragon watched him closely, its eyes narrowing as it sensed the will of the gods within the mortal before it. Then, with a low, rumbling sigh, dragon lowered its great head in acceptance. There had been no clash of weapons, no battle of wills, only the quiet understanding of fate. The confrontation was over before it had truly begun. A victory not of strength, but of wisdom. As the dragon withdrew, its massive form disappearing once again beneath the still waters of the spring, the landscape returned to its former serenity. The water, now calm and reflective, mirrored the sky above, which had turned a soft shade of twilight blue. Far above, Athena watched with quiet amusement. Her brother's dragon, undefeated by so many before, had been subdued not by force, but by a mortal's cleverness and empathy. A slow smile spread across her face. Cadmus had proven to be more resourceful than she and Ares had anticipated. There's more to him than I thought, Athena mused as she glanced toward Ares. And this mortal may yet surprise us. Ares frowned, his amusement fading as he watched the dragon retreat beneath the waters. His prized creature, a symbol of his strength and power, had been bested, not by the might of a warrior, but by a simple gesture of peace. The idea irked him, and a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. It wasn't the way of things in his view. Battle was meant to be won through strength, not cleverness. Yet here was Cadmus proving otherwise. Subdued with an olive branch, Ares muttered, his tone laced with irritation. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Athena raised an eyebrow, her expression thoughtful as she continued to watch Cadmus. Strength alone does not define a warrior, she replied, her voice calm but firm. Cadmus has faced many trials, not just with force, but with intellect and heart. That is what makes him worthy of the gods' favor. Ares scoffed lightly, turning fully to face her now. Oh, come on, Athena. Don't tell me you think he's some kind of chosen one. This was nothing more than a stroke of luck. He leaned forward slightly, the air between them light, but with a hint of challenge. If you ask me, he still has much to prove. Athena met his gaze, unfazed by his skepticism. Perhaps, she conceded, her voice even. But his journey is not yet complete, and the gods have their eyes on him. I would caution you, brother, not to underestimate the will of fate. Ares laughed, shaking his head as he looked back to the earth below. Fate, huh? You'll see about that, dear sister. He gave her a playful grin, his confidence unshaken. Perhaps I'll test his mettle a little further. Let's see if your clever Cadmus is as worthy as you say. Athena gave a small smile. She turned to leave, her parting words carrying on the wind. Just remember, she called back over her shoulder. The gods are watching as the waters of the spring shimmered beneath the fading light of day. Cadmus stood in quiet contemplation. The dragon had been defeated, but a sense of uncertainty lingered in the air. His men were gone, and though he had passed the trial, the path ahead remained unclear. Silence stretched around him, a soft rustling of leaves, the only sound that accompanied his thoughts. Before that silence could settle into doubt, gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the scent of jasmine and wisdom. Athena appeared beside him, a figure bathed in a soft, ethereal glow, like moonlight filtering through the branches. Her presence was calm, her gaze steady. You have done well, Cadmus, she said. But your journey is not yet complete. Cadmus turned to face the goddess, his heart still steady in the face of the unknown. What must I do? He asked quietly, his voice respectful. Athena smiled, her eyes filled with the quiet wisdom of the ages. Take these, she said, holding out her hand. Cadmus extended his hand, and into it, Athena dropped a handful of sharp, gleaming teeth. These are the teeth of Ares' last dragon, long since past. Sow them into the earth, and from them shall raise warriors who will aid you in building your city. Without hesitation, Cadmus pressed the teeth into the soft soil, one by one. The earth parted easily beneath his hands, as though welcoming the teeth into its depths. Around him, the air grew still, and the quiet seemed to deepen. The world itself seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for the magic to take root. A soft rustle of leaves, a distant murmur of water. All of it faded into the background as the ancient power of the dragon's teeth began to stir. Slowly, the ground began to shift. A faint tremor rippled through the earth, and the soil parted once more. From the places where the dragon's teeth had been sown, figures began to rise, strong, fully armed warriors. They emerged with the grace and quiet strength of ancient trees, tall and unyielding. Their faces were solemn, their expressions unreadable, as though they had waited for centuries to be called forth. One by one, the warriors stood, their spears held high, the power of the earth coursing through their veins. They did not shout nor rush forward. Instead, they stood still. It was as if they had always been there, as much a part of the land as the rocks and trees that surrounded them. Ares watched the scene unfold below, his annoyance deepening with every passing moment. First, his prized dragon had been subdued, and now Athena, his own sister, was meddling in his affairs, and she, of all the gods, thought it was her duty to reward the mortal with new warriors. Ares' jaw tightened as he observed the warriors rising from the earth, fully formed and armed, awaiting Cadmus's command. The sight only fueled his frustration. She never knows when to leave things alone, Ares muttered under his breath, his fingers curling into a fist. His gaze narrowed on the scene below, the irritation bubbling up inside him. Cadmus did not deserve such a gift. With a flick of his hand, Ares decided to make his displeasure known. A mere gesture, but one filled with divine will. The once silent warriors turned their gaze from Cadmus to one another. Their expressions hardened, their grips tightened on their spears, and without a word, they turned on each other. The clash of steel echoed across the hills as the warriors began to destroy each other. Ares watched with a grim satisfaction, a small smile playing on his lips. Let her meddle all she wants, he thought. I will always remind them whose will truly commands the battlefield. Cadmus stood at the edge of the battlefield, watching as the warriors clashed. Their strikes were swift, their spears flashing in the soft light of dusk. Soon the battle was over, and Cadmus was alone again. The warriors, who had risen from the ground moments ago, were now gone, their forms scattered like dust in the wind. As Cadmus surveyed the aftermath, a ripple of energy shifted the air around him. He turned, and there before him was Ares. Cadmus met his gaze, unwavering, but said nothing. He understood that this was not a time for words, but for reckoning. You've done well, Ares said, his voice rich with amusement. Not many mortals can face my dragon and live to tell the tale. You have strength, Cadmus, though it seems Athena had a hand in your success, as she often does. Cadmus met the god's gaze, his expression unwavering. There was no room for pride or indignation, only the steady realization that his fate had always been bound to the god's whims. Ares took a step closer, his eyes gleaming with mischief. But now you face a different challenge, he said, his tone teasing. You have dared to best my dragon, and for that, you must pay a price. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. I give you two options. Mortal, face your death here and now, or serve me for 8 years as penance for your actions. Cadmus's mind did not waver. There was no fear in his heart, only a calm acceptance of what lay before him. I will serve you, Cadmus said simply, his voice steady. For 8 years, I will be at your command. Ares smiled, a flicker of admiration crossing his features. You are wise, Cadmus, he said. Perhaps you will prove more useful to me than I first thought. He gestured for Cadmus to follow. Come then. Your time in my service begins now. The days that followed were marked by a quiet sense of duty. True to his word, Cadmus served Ares without complaint. His tasks were varied. Some involved overseeing minor conflicts in distant lands, while others were simpler, such as maintaining order within Ares' domain. Each day, Cadmus carried out his duties with the same steady resolve that had guided him throughout his journey. There was no resentment in his heart. This, too, was part of his destiny, a path laid out by the gods themselves. And so, he adapted to his new life. At first, Ares regarded Cadmus as just another servant, but as the weeks passed, something shifted. Ares watched as Cadmus handled each task with quiet determination, never faltering, never questioning his place. There was a strength in Cadmus that went beyond the physical, a strength of spirit that intrigued the god of war. Though Ares would not say it aloud, he found himself growing fond of Cadmus's unwavering loyalty and calm demeanor. And there was a bond forming between them, subtle at first, but undeniable. Ares had tested many mortals in his time, but few had earned his respect as Cadmus had. The god of war began to look at his servant not just as a mortal, bound by obligation, but as someone who might one day stand beside him as an equal, someone worthy of a god's respect. Ares, ever the god of challenge, did not let Cadmus's service go untested. In his curiosity and amusement, he devised tasks that would push the mortal's limits, both in body and mind. Some challenges required physical endurance, overseeing the training of new warriors or managing difficult campaigns. Others were subtler, meant to test Cadmus's wisdom and strategy, negotiating peace between warring factions, or navigating complex disputes between rival clans. These were trials that could break lesser men, and Ares watched closely, waiting for the moment when Cadmus would falter. But no such moment came. In the evenings, after the day's tasks were done, Ares would often find himself sitting alongside Cadmus, overlooking the vast lands from his high perch. There was no need for conversation. The quiet between them was enough. A shared understanding that did not require words. One evening, as the two sat quietly overlooking the distant hills, Ares posed a question about a brewing conflict. Without hesitation, Cadmus offered a thoughtful solution, one that favored strategy over force. Ares listened, his eyes narrowing slightly in thought. After a long pause, a rare smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "You are wise, Cadmus," Ares said, his voice carrying a note of admiration. "Wiser than most of the gods." As the years passed, Ares began to notice a shift in Cadmus, not in his strength or loyalty, but in the way his gaze lingered on Harmonia, Ares' daughter. The interactions were subtle at first. Quiet smile here, a shared glance there. But over time, it became clear to Ares that something deeper was blossoming between the two. At last, the day came when Cadmus's years of servitude would end, Ares summoned the mortal to the terrace, where, nearly a decade ago, he had first watched Cadmus following the cow. "You have served me well, Cadmus," Ares said, his voice steady. "Your time here is complete. You are free to return to the mortal realm." For a moment, Cadmus stood in silence, his gaze drifting to the distant horizon. The freedom he had long awaited was within his grasp, yet his heart felt heavy. After a pause, he turned to Ares, his voice low but firm. "I wish to stay, my lord." Ares raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "Stay?" he asked, genuinely intrigued. "Why would a mortal choose to remain in the service of a god when freedom is offered?" Cadmus took a deep breath, his thoughts turning to Harmonia, whose presence had become the light of his days. "As long as I serve you," Cadmus began, choosing his words carefully, "I am able to see Harmonia. But if I return to the mortal realm, I will be separated from her. I cannot bear the thought of that distance." Ares watched him closely. The god had noticed long ago how Cadmus's gaze lingered on his daughter, and how Harmonia's eyes often sought him out as well. A bond had formed between them, deeper than mere affection. For a moment, Ares said nothing, his eyes narrowing slightly in thought. Then, a slow smile curved his lips, one not of mockery, but of genuine amusement and approval. "So, you would remain a servant just to stay close to my daughter?" Ares' tone was less a question and more a test, his gaze challenging but not unkind. Cadmus nodded, his expression resolute. "I would, my lord. To be near her is worth more than any freedom I could be given." Ares studied him, the silence stretching between them. Then, with a low chuckle, he shook his head. "Foolish, perhaps, but admirable." Stepping forward, Ares clasped Cadmus's shoulder, his grip strong, but not harsh. "You are a rare mortal, Cadmus, and I do not deny that you have proven yourself worthy of more than servitude." Ares paused, his gaze turning thoughtful, as he looked out over the land below. "Why settle for one life?" he mused. "Why not have both the mortal realm and my daughter?" Cadmus blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" Ares turned back to him, a glint of something almost playful in his eyes. "I propose a better solution. Cadmus, return to the mortal realm, as is your right, but take Harmonia with you. Marry her. She belongs with you, and I believe you have earned the right to have her at your side. The words hung in the air, their meaning sinking in slowly. Cadmus's breath caught in his throat, a mixture of disbelief and joy flooding him. Marry the Harmona, he echoed, barely able to contain the hope rising in his chest. Ares nodded, his expression softening, though his voice remained firm. You have served me with honor, and you have earned more than my respect. You have earned my daughter's love. She is yours, Cadmus, and I will see to it that your union is blessed. The day of the wedding dawned with a golden light that bathed the land in warmth. A soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and the quiet murmur of anticipation filled the air. Gods and mortals alike gathered beneath the open sky, their faces serene as they awaited the union of Cadmus and Harmonia. Ares stood to the side, his usual air of fierce command softened by the occasion. He watched as Cadmus and Harmonia approached the altar, their hands entwined, their faces radiant with love. For the first time, Ares felt not the drive of battle, but a quiet pride, a sense of contentment in seeing his daughter united with a man who had proven himself worthy. As the ceremony drew to a close, the celebrations began in earnest. The gods offered their blessings, gifts of beauty, wisdom, and peace, while the mortals danced beneath the soft glow of the evening light. There was no rush, no sense of urgency, only a quiet, joyful harmony that filled the air. In this moment, all was as it should be, peaceful, balanced, and blessed by the gods. I hope you enjoyed this story, and it has brought you a night of peaceful, restful sleep. Please join me again tomorrow night for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.